What's up, everybody? Welcome into the 615. It's your host, Wheels. Today, you see, we're recapping Titans, Colts from this last weekend, and then we're previewing Titans and the Washington Commanders with our guest, Tyler Rowland from the Locked On Titans podcast, and we'll be back with Tyler right after this.
Tennessee Titans season's over. Let's call it what it is.
Running the ball now.
Covered by Lowe, loses the ball. It's Titans ball. And to Hilliard, he's got room. 30, 20, 10, 5, it's zone.
Go win the Super Bowl for this entire season.
Take a deep breath. Okay, have some fun. You boys do things. You're going to make mistakes. Every one of you is going to make a mistake. Go figure out a way to make it right.
Wherever you listen throughout the world, it's football time in Tennessee.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. And of course, you see the socials are running across the bottom of the screen. Let's come bring our guest in. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Our guest, Tyler Rowland. Tyler, welcome in.
Yeah, welcome, everybody. Ready to talk some football. Thank you for having me on, Lee. I appreciate it. Been an okay season so far. Ready to see the Titans take another step and get better as a football team as we go forward.
But before we dive into Titans news, there was some breaking news that came out. Cole Beasley has retired from the NFL after 11 years.
Yeah, I thought his comment about stepping away to be a full-time dad and, worry about his family, I thought that was pretty funny considering the Tom Brady situation. But it makes sense for him. He's been in the NFL over a decade, so time to step away.
And then, of course, Andy Isabella has cleared waivers, and he's now a free agent.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to sign with the Ravens.
Oh, wow. Because
Yep.
I just mentioned to somebody, I'm like, if I'm J-Rob, go after Andy Isabella because we don't know how long Traylon Burks will be out.
Yeah, I get why people want an addition at wide receiver. I don't think Andy Isabella would really help with Traylon Burks' absence. I think they would probably do different things, but I get why everybody is kind of looking for some sort of wide receiver help at this moment. I get it, but I'm not surprised, I guess, that J-Rob didn't go out and get Isabella. I think Kyle Phillips kind of fills that role, and you'd like to have some depth behind him, but makes sense that Isabella looked for a place where he could get an immediate role right away and be out on the field a lot with the Ravens.
So somebody just said, never thought Tyler would guest star on someone else's podcast. I'm impressed.
I do a bunch of other podcasts all the time. Actually, I've recorded like 3 of them today for some Buffalo, or not Buffalo Bills, but some Washington Commanders folks. So don't be so surprised. I love going on other podcasts and stuff like that. It's a great time.
So as I said, we're starting out talking Titans Colts, and can we say that Ryan Tannehill had a solid game?
I think solid is absolutely the right way to put it. He had a solid game, and I would say so far this year he's been solid. Honestly, he's been pretty good, is how I would put it. So I think that's fair.
And he's only thrown what 2 or 3 interceptions this whole season so far.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think most people acknowledge that while Tannehill may not be playing the best football he's ever played as a Titan, I think everybody realizes that Todd Downing is still at the reins of the offense. And Tannehill, while he's not capable of, in the right offense, he is capable of elite play. But Arthur Smith's not walking back through that door. But I guess the reality is we all know that Tannehill can play better if he had a better offensive mind helping him out. With the play calling, but with all of the disadvantages that he has, he's played pretty solid so far this year.
And of course, Derrick Henry this last Sunday looked like Derrick Henry.
Yep, Return of the King. It was a great performance, and honestly, there were more yards out there. There were a few instances where there's one block away from being a big play. I remember on a counter out of single back. Torrey Carter leading up through. There was almost a big play, and one guy came in from the backside. And then on one of the plays on the final drive where they're trying to salt the clock, Torrey Carter tackled Derrick Henry by not getting out of his way as the fullback. And there were more meat on that bone that could have been chewed as well. So I think Derrick Henry is capable of those calls that got brought back yards in week 1 against the Giants. I think Derrick Henry is just like 3 or 4 plays away from leading the NFL in rushing yards right now. He's knocked the rust off. He's ready to go.
And then, of course, Titans and Truth had mentioned this. In the second half, Tennessee has been outscored 64-7 in the second half.
It's got to get better. They got to play 4 quarters. And I think if you play around with a team like the Commanders, they're just bad enough to the Titans to get a lead in the first half, but just good enough to make a second half comeback as well. And the Titans got to quit playing with fire with those.
But if you look back at definitely week 1, Titans were 2 or 3 big plays away from being 3-1.
I know it's so unfortunate that they play games like that every single season. But yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't worse. I'm glad that they're starting to turn those into wins, but they need to have good second halves too. And you're right, they're pretty close to being, other than that slaughter in Buffalo where they were just sent out to die, really, for everyone's media darling. The Titans should be 3-1 right now, and the season would feel a little different.
And of course, Chig showed up somewhat on Sunday.
Yeah, it was nice. They started using him in situations. I think the reality is, while we're all happy about Chig's performance, the reality of that situation is Austin Hooper is nowhere near as good of a player as a lot of us hoped going into the season. He doesn't have the burst to move the way that he used to, and he's not blocking well enough either. So while it's nice to see Chig Okonkwo used the way that they used him in some gadget ways in the offense, the reality is they're going to need him to be not only that, but more, because Hooper has just shown that he's not much more than Austin Hooper, or he's Anthony Ferkser, but with a name that we all recognize like Austin Hooper. That's basically what he's doing for the Titans right now. So they need Chig Okonkwo to keep this up. And
then the same person that came in, he mentioned we're also 2 or 3 plays away from being 0-4.
I don't know if I agree with that, because the Titans have just outright played better than their opponents in the first half of 3 out of 4 games. And it wasn't like 3 or 4 plays here. I mean, if you really want to go through it, 3 or 4 plays in an NFL game can swing any game either way. Yeah. But I would say that the Titans have been much closer to being 3-1 than they are to being 0-4.
But then let's look at Indianapolis. Matt Ryan, 27-37 for over 350 yards passing.
Yeah, classic Titans giving up a bunch of yards, but finding a way to bow their neck in the red zone and not give up a lot of points. This looks like the Titans defense from, if I recall, like 2021, where they like yardage wise were the worst in the league, but red zone wise they were pretty decent. Like I believe they were in the
They're
late
top three.
teens.
They're
Yeah,
top three
so
right now in red zone.
they're doing that basically. They're giving up a bunch of yards because they don't have guys out there they don't have a healthy enough unit to really shut people down all the way like they did at the end of last year. But I think they have enough, and they have smart enough players on defense that when they get into the red zone, they can stop people from scoring. So the yards are the yards. Whatever.
And,
Matt Ryan, enjoy your 350. We know what happened.
and of course, look at Jonathan Taylor. Didn't even hit 50 yards rushing. That is a stacked interior
Right.
defensive line.
Yeah, it's crazy. Tierre Tart played great. I thought even some of the rotational guys like Kevin Strong and Naquan Jones really did a good job of holding their position at the front lines. Jeffrey Simmons made penetration that had an impact all day, even if it didn't look great on the box score. And the linebackers and the edges played so much better in run defense and with so much more physicality. But I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that there wasn't a run threat from the quarterback. So, like where Daniel Jones in week 1 with the Giants, he was a run threat. Matt Ryan
Josh
obviously
Allen.
isn't. So
Josh
the defensive
Allen
ends,
also.
exactly. So the defensive ends could crash down like they really haven't been. Even Derek Carr has a little bit of movement to him. You know what I mean? More than Matt Ryan's corpse. So I think that allowed the Titans defensive ends to crash down real well, and it freed up the linebackers, and they were able to make instinctive plays. And hopefully, I think this is the Titans get better as the season goes along. That's what Mike Vrabel's always preached. And I think we're seeing that in real time, that the defense is already up front in run defense, improved a ton from week 1.
And if you look at between last season and this season, we started out extremely slow in the first half, but we started pounding back in the second.
Right.
But now we're getting started in the first and slacking off a whole lot in the second.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Really, it's hard to, like, people can say that they have answers and we can theorize about Tim Kelly's involvement in the script and red zone and all of that. We can theorize about it, but it really makes no sense at all that the Titans were so good last year at adjusting and so poor at starting, and that's completely flipped now. Like, let's assume the realistic answer is Todd Downing still the OC. He's playing the call. He's game planning. He's calling the plays. Let's not pretend what we all want to hear and that Tim Kelly is involved. Like, how could this even logically make sense? There's no way to know unless you're Mike Vrabel and like watching them work all the time. But this drastic flip of what they can do, like if Todd Downing was capable of making adjustments to do what they did in second halves last year, and now he's just better at the opening script, how, it's like a Monstar situation. It's like being good in the first half stole his talent from the second half or something. Like, I really can't wrap my mind around how this has happened to the offense, how to flip like this. It doesn't make any logical sense.
And this person brought up Dylan Cole and David Long Jr. really took the run-stopping criticism to heart.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think David Long had his best game of the season. David Long's an instinctive player. David Long is not the type of linebacker who, if you played football, you did drills when you were younger as a linebacker, you know that a block is going to come up to you. So the coach would run up to you with the chest bag, and you'd get your hands on it and you'd hold it. And then the ball carrier would go and you'd throw away, you'd shed the blocker, and you'd go make the tackle. David Long's not big enough to do that at the NFL level. So what David Long does is he like slithers by offensive linemen. He basically jukes them out and then gets around them and makes plays. Playing with that sort of speed and aggressiveness and downhill manner and not being able to take on a block, look for the ball carrier and shed like you could if you were a bigger linebacker, doing that is dangerous but also rewarding. And when David Long is playing instinctive football and then the rust is knocked off and he's feeling good and he understands he's in a good rhythm like he wasn't early in the season, now it's a month into the year. He has more of a rhythm, more understanding, more calm to him. And that instinctiveness pays off more than it did early on where he was shooting and missing, overrunning stuff early in the year. Now he knows exactly where to be. He understands his angles, and he's using that instinctive, aggressive play to slither right around offensive linemen and then cut down running backs, which is what he was doing when he was playing his best football last year. So it's exciting to see, and I would imagine if he can stay healthy, it'll only get better.
And of course, talk to defense. Let's head over to the top, or my top 3 performers. Rashad Weaver,
Mm-hmm.
2 tackles and sacks. And Nico Autry, 2 tackles and 2 sacks. But the man that I really want to hit on, Tierra Tart.
Yeah.
The big man found the ball.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive stuff. And I believe Brian Baldinger had a nice breakdown of Tierra's performance. I think just think about, he's an undrafted free agent. Like he went to 4 different colleges to make his way, junior college, like his path to being a starter in the NFL, and not just a starter, but a contributing player who really makes plays. Him playing better football and really kind of I just have a theory that the Titans not playing in preseason games early in the season, we see every year with Mike Vrabel's team, the Titans aren't really ready to play in week 1. They never play good football. And I think that it's because the players don't play in the preseason. Mike Vrabel's willing to sacrifice that, knowing that his team will get better. And as they get more accustomed to like the real physicality of Sunday football, not joint practices, not scrimmages with your own team, once they really get like, oh yeah, this is what getting hit feels like, this is what football feels like, then it's like, oh yeah, the Titans are a pretty good team. Oh yeah. So I think that a lot of players on the team are experiencing that. And David Long and Tierra Tart are both ones that we've talked about.
And of course, before we head in the back end, I'm going to throw your Twitter up on the page.
Thank you.
So anybody who has either questions about the Titans, reach out to Tyler. And of course, his Twitter is @TicTacTitans. And of course, you can also find the Locked On Titans podcast anywhere you find your podcast at.
Yeah, absolutely. Locked On Titans, free and available Monday through Friday. All platforms, including the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Oh, I'm also contractually obligated by the network to say your team every day.
And somebody else this person brought up a very good point. We set most of our starters in the preseason to avoid injury and ended up with a ton of injuries in the first 4 weeks. How can that even be fixed?
I got to tell you, I say on my show all the time, and I'm going to repeat it here, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And nobody likes this answer because the Titans they had record-breaking injuries last year, and this year they've been super injured too. People don't like this answer, and I get it. I do. I don't know. I'm not a strength coach. I'm not, a physical therapist. I'm not a sports science doctor. I don't even know what to call these people. I have so little medical knowledge, and most everybody you talk to, you're not going to find somebody regularly who's just a Titans fan who really does have the medical knowledge to know whether something's being done incorrectly or something's not, and it's just bad luck and it's just injuries. It's really impossible for anybody to know, and anybody who says they do know is just kind of lying or just saying it to say it. Here's the only thing that we know for certain. Here's the only truth that we know as casual, regular, in-depth fans. The players on the team. And these injuries, sorry, just want to finish it. These injuries are record-breaking, and at some point, even if we don't know enough to know, we realize there's a problem. Something has to change if they have record-breaking injuries 2 years in a row. And it's hard to criticize because we don't know anything about the subject matter, but at some point the results have to speak for themselves. So some change has to be made if this continues.
And of course, Titan Fox says you do say that a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm contractually obligated. You guys don't know it, but there's a network executive behind me right now just waiting. And if I don't say it, you won't see me anymore. So it's contractually obligated business, guys. There's nothing I can do.
And then, of course, Zach Carpenter said that most receivers would have broken ankle the way they got tackled, the way Burks got tackled.
Yeah. I think turf toe, and according to Dr. David Chow at Pro Football Doc, who came on the Locked On Titans podcast earlier this week, according to him, the Titans should be hopeful for about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks at max. But if they put him on IR, it would have been 5 weeks with the bye because it has to be 4 games. So either way, it could have been a high ankle sprain. It could have been a Liz Frank injury like Derrick Henry had last year, where he broke a bone in his foot. It could have been a bunch of different things. I think, yeah, we have to be pretty happy that it's only turf toe. But when we say that, we also have to recognize at the same time that turf toe is insanely painful. It's basically like jamming your big toe, which totally affects your big toe is the most important toe by far. And think about how painful it would be for that toe to be jammed back inside and to play NFL football on that. So even if he comes back and plays, you worry about the pain management throughout the year.
And of course, there's an article that I came across, and it's by its own Titan sized. And
is it Will Lomas, my boy? Will Lomas at J Lomas on Twitter.
Well, here's what the article is talking about. No one is calling for anyone's job now. But after the Titans,
that's got to be Will. Yeah.
The Titans need to ask themselves what they want from their strength and conditioning program, and whether this staff is getting the job done.
Yep. Yeah, I think I would put a lot of money on the fact that article right there is written by Will Lomas. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I would almost bet on it because we've had these discussions on Twitter. I mean, while we don't know anything medically about what they're doing to say, like, hey, they're doing this wrong, that wrong, whatever, the results have to speak for themselves. And this amount of injuries, like at some point, if you have the most injuries in the NFL in back-to-back years, at some point, somebody has to be doing something wrong. Like, you can't just call that bad luck. You can't just be like, oh, well, we have the most injuries every year, nothing we can do about it. Like, you have to at some point start to ask some questions. So I'd probably agree with the article before even reading it, because it's only logical, even if we don't know enough about the practice to have specific criticisms. The results, again, speak for themselves.
And it's actually Michael Bishop, the Power Hour, who is the one who wrote that article.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree with you, Michael Bishop. So I'm with you in that. Questions have to be asked. So good job, Michael Bishop. And I agree with that thought process.
But the headline of it is Tennessee Titans strength and conditioning program is a clear liability.
I don't feel, the thing is, without any medical knowledge, I can't say that. I don't know what these people are doing to know if they're doing anything wrong. But all I can say is just the logical argument of they have the most injuries of any team in the league 2 years in a row. If that happens, then yeah, like, it's only logical to ask questions. But I don't know if I can make strong statements about it.
But as we head into back end, let's head into Titans Commanders, which is the game on Sunday in Washington. And of course, we already know the Titans stats. Ryan Tannehill, 17 of 21, 137 yards passing and 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. But Derrick Henry, we need him to have another game like this to have a shot in this game this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything that the Titans do, especially now that he who must not be named is gone, everything was based around Derrick Henry. It has to be that even 10 times more. Now, especially with Rowland gone, at least for this game, it does make you worry about their ability to go off of Derrick Henry. So they just need Derrick Henry to really blow up. I think it'll be tough too. Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat. I mean, Jamin Davis at linebacker. They have some good players in the front seven. And
Yes.
I think their defense is a little underrated right now. I do think they have some good players. So yeah, Derrick Henry's going to have to find a way to break through, especially with the lack of weapons in the passing game with Burks
And
out.
we cannot forget Chase Young.
Well, Chase Young is injured right now. He's still not back yet from the ACL. He's still on PUP, I think. So he's eligible to come back this week, but that's not he
Not
hasn't
100%.
practiced yet or anything like that. Yeah, so I wouldn't expect Chase Young in the game. But even without Chase Young, I mean that's the thing. The other players still
they're
very
still a good
formidable
defense.
front. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, let's look at Washington. Last week against the Cowboys, they had almost 300 yards total of total offense.
Mm-hmm.
So that proves, hey, they can put up yards.
Yeah, and they've been better in second halves than first halves. So they've been coming out and kind of getting down early. And then when they go into halftime and make adjustments, they come out and kind of at least be respectable on the way back, other than that Philadelphia game where I think Wentz got sacked 9 times. But they have like playmakers, Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. I think Jahan Dotson will be out for this game, but Daimi Brown, will get some snaps, and Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson off of 2 gunshots a month ago somehow may play in this game, came back to practice this week. What a story he is. So they have weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And we know from playing Carson Wentz that while he does some really weird things and makes some strange mistakes, at the same time, he has some arm strength and some mobility. He makes some weird good plays too. So I think that Washington has the ability to take advantage of some of the Titans' weaknesses, but that'll depend on the Titans' D-line against Washington's offensive line. But we see that, if their offensive line blocks just a little bit, they have the players to maybe make some plays.
But it also doesn't help that they were 5 of 15 on third down last week.
Yep, money downs. That's not getting it done. And 11 penalties for 136 yards. That's not a disciplined team. That's a team who's been down a lot and gets frustrated from being down a lot. So the Titans got to come out and get up early on this team, so that the pass rush can tee off for real. But they got to make sure that they play 4 quarters of football, because Washington has shown they have better second halves than they do first halves. And if the Titans leave the door open, Washington can go through it.
And of course, the number at the very bottom, time of possession, over 33 minutes that Washington had the ball last week.
Yeah, people are able to score quick on them because their secondary has some players at cornerback who are underperforming, Kyle Fuller and William Jackson III. But I would say that that's more of a product of their defense getting scored on than it is them playing like ball control football or anything like that.
And speaking of secondaries, the Titans' secondary is extremely suspect week to week.
Yeah, well, that's part of the issue. That's why I highlight the Titans' defensive line against Washington's offensive line. Washington's offensive line has been horrid so far. They've given up 17 sacks. We know that Carson Wentz, under immense pressure, will wilt and give the ball away and commit turnovers. The Titans' game plan has to be getting pressure on Carson Wentz, taking advantage of that meager offensive line. Not only that, but their starting right tackle, Samuel Cosme, the pick out of Texas, he didn't practice. There's a chance he may not play. They're going to be inserting Cornelius Lucas, and I think Cornelius Lucas is a fine swing tackle, but also there's some issues at left tackle. They've had some trouble on the interior outside of Andrew Norwell at left guard. He's very solid. But at center, they got not only a backup, but a backup's backup. Right guard, they've had some trouble. So now if your right tackle and your left tackle are banged up, the Titans have a chance to feast. And they're going to have to do that, because if not, like I mentioned earlier, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Daimi Brown, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, they're going to have weapons to take advantage of the Titans' banged up secondary and linebacker group. So the only way that the Titans can prevent that is by getting pressure, and not just in the first half, but the whole game.
And so Time Fox said, don't say the wrong thing, Tyler. We need to keep you around. You're too smart to get fired.
Well, I don't know about too smart to get fired, but let's hope that I don't. But no, we should be good to go. I hit all of my network requirements pretty often.
And of course, who was the linebacker that exploded on Washington's defense?
It's probably Jamin Davis. My guess, he was their first round pick last year. And to my knowledge, he's been pretty solid. He's had his ups and downs, but he's been pretty solid.
And of course, let's head in to the keys to victory for the Titans and the, I want to say Redskins, but it's the Commanders.
Yeah. We gotta make it's hard. It's difficult. Like, I really struggled all week with the Raiders. I wanted to say Oakland Raiders so many times, and I had to stop myself in the middle of my show and say, Las Vegas Raiders or Vegas Raiders. Commanders is one of those things. I thought they should have been the Washington Pigskins. You get to still call them the Skins. Washington Pigskins is Washington football team because a pigskin is a football. They wear the hog mask. That's the big tradition for them. They wear the pig masks and stuff, the hog mollies up front and all that. You kind of get to keep incorporating that by being the pig skin so the fans can still wear the pig heads. And it's not lame like Commanders or other stuff. I just thought Washington Pigskins would be funny, would be cool, would be perfect to keep the traditions going. And I mean, they went with Commanders, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely hard to get used to.
Before we get into the keys to victory, so brought up, do y'all feel like this can be a trap game?
Well, I don't think the Titans have played good enough football so far this year to call anything a trap game. I don't think the Titans are good enough to call a game a trap game. You know what I mean? Like, right, yeah, right. Well, I mean, we know the Titans too well. We know the Titans. Like, guys, don't do this to yourselves again. We know this team too well. Don't ever think that they're supposed to win these games. They always play down to their competition. No matter who the Titans play each Sunday, they're going to play as good as that team is supposed to be coming in. If they play the Rams are awesome. Well, guess what the Titans play? The Titans play awesome. Most of the time against Buffalo, Buffalo's awesome. What do the Titans do? Play awesome. The Chiefs are awesome. Titans play awesome. Texans are bad. Titans play bad. Jets, bad. Titans play bad. So just don't ever think that the Titans are supposed to win, and I think you'll be safe there.
They stoop to their opponent's level. Pretty much.
And there were quotes. Kevin Byard, I posted something on Twitter earlier because all of the people from the NFL Network picked the Titans to win in their pregame pick show or whatever. So Kevin Byard before the season said he likes to be the hunter, not the hunted. He likes being the underdog. And that is the Titans mentality. And they never play like they're favorites. They never take care of business against teams that they're better than. They always play with their food and linger around because they don't know how to be the hunted. They simply don't. It's not their identity as a team. So when they get in that position, like they have been 2 years in a row in the playoffs, they struggle because they don't know how to be the favorite. They just can't. And sadly, it seems like that's been the story of the Titans since they moved to Nashville. They just don't play well when they're the favorites.
And of course, I said we're heading into the keys to victory. And of course, I put both teams on one. For Tennessee, I said take McLaurin out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's like when they played Devontae Adams, when they played Michael Pittman last week. This team, while they have some good options, McLaurin is obviously the best. Hopefully, Christian Fulton can play some good football there and make McLaurin less of an issue.
And of course, force wins to be one-dimensional.
In terms of making them pass the ball?
Yes, pretty much. Keep him in the pocket.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that 100%. You can't let Wentz get outside the pocket and make easy playmaking situations. Him in the pocket, make him feel the pressure. He'll drop the ball on the ground. He'll throw interceptions. If they can just make him a passer and not a runner, I agree. That's a great point. That'll go a long way for the Titans to win the game.
And if Washington wants to win this game, force the running game to beat you.
Yeah, well, the running game can't beat the Titans when they don't have an offensive line like the Giants have. So I think if they do that, if they force the run game to beat them, the run game won't be able to. So that's winning formula.
And of course, protect Ryan.
Yeah, I mean
100%.
that's got to be in there every week. We know that the offensive line, they've had good performances, but I'm not ready to trust them yet. I'm not quite ready to give them full trust that Tannehill is going to be upright most game, especially like I mentioned earlier, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat. I think that they have some guys who can get there, so that will be key, and especially without Traylon Burks, a guy who gets open real fast and is ready to go right away. Robert Woods, NWI, Cody Hollister will probably play a
Maybe Kyle
ton.
Phillips is back.
Maybe Kyle Phelps will get back in there. I think they're being careful with him since it's a long season, and he is a small guy. So I think ultimately the Titans will need to give themselves a little extra time for some of their guys to get open this week. It'll be some slower developing things, and they'll definitely have to protect Tannehill, and that'll probably include keeping in some tight ends and some backs and things like that.
And of course, here's something that somebody brought up. What is something the Titans can do to fix their second half performance?
That's tough because there's a bunch of people to blame. If there was just like one thing that you could point out, what I would say, number one, is just stay creative. Last week in the first half against the Colts, they ran the swing pass to Henry. They ran the screen for Henry. They ran an exotic formation for the play type that they used where they ran counter with Torrey Carter. But Torrey Carter was a tight end instead of in fullback alignment. They did the pitch to Traylon Burks on 3rd and 1 where Tannehill faked like he was going to sneak it. There were some other things in there that I thought were creative things to get the offense going and create some big plays early on. And then in the second half, they just went back to all the normal stuff. They didn't do any of those creative things. I don't recall seeing a more than one screen in the second half. No more swing passes. No more exotic plays. And I'm not asking for trick plays, but just some of those creative things they were doing in the first half, they didn't do it all in the second half. And it's like they got conservative. So I would say remain aggressive, remain creative because they're getting it's almost like they're like, okay, we're up by double digits. We just don't want to blow it. And Tannehill gets real tight and they stop calling anything with any creativity to it on offense. And they just rely on the defense to save the day and close it out. It's almost like baseball where they're the starting pitcher and then they want the defense to be the closer. It just shouldn't work like that in football. And I would just say remain creative and aggressive is what they need to do.
And then, of course, from the defensive perspective, forced turnovers and mistakes on Washington.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to decide the game. Again, I keep coming back to it. The Titans' defensive line against this beleaguered offensive line of the Commanders. If the Titans dominate that matchup, which they should, and going into the game, the coaching staff is expecting to dominate that matchup. If the Titans dominate that matchup, they're going to put pressure on Wentz, and we know that Wentz is going to make mistakes and give away turnovers. Yeah, so that's just it. That's all it comes. If the Titans can get consistent pressure, they're going to win the entire football game. But it's just all about being able to do that.
And then, of course, on Washington's side of this whole thing, force Tannehill to beat you with his arm.
Yeah, and I think both your first 2 points, I think they go hand in hand. If you can take Derrick Henry out of the equation, then you force Tannehill to beat you with his arm. And without Burks and with Dennis Daly at left tackle and NPF at right tackle and Aaron Brewer at left guard, the Titans don't have enough to win in the passing game consistently. They did in prior years, but they don't now. So, yeah, if you force Tannehill to beat you by taking Derrick Henry out of the equation, then you have a great chance of beating the Titans.
And Titan Fox said, I said it earlier, Vrabel's complacency is what is killing us.
Yeah, I mean, basically like what I'm saying, they get conservative, and I don't know if that's direction from Mike Vrabel, like, hey, nothing crazy. We're not having turnovers. I don't know if that's a Vrabel directive or if that's Todd Downing getting nervous, but it resonates. And you see Ryan Tannehill getting nervous, and you see Derrick Henry being a little, wobbling around and not wanting to hit as hard because things are blocked up more, and the linemen getting more penalties, and, everybody kind of gets tight they tighten up in the second half. And that's part of it. And I think it's coming down from the coaching staff. The vibe's coming down from the coaching staff that, hey, we got a lead. We can't mess it up. You know what I mean? And they play like that in the second half.
And of course, the third point for Washington, burn the secondary.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, this secondary is suspect from game to game.
Yeah, no, and I think it's because of the injuries. I feel like we've had a different secondary in terms of players game to game. You know what I mean? And when you have that, the offensive line is number one, in my opinion, but the second position group that relies on chemistry the most is the defensive backfield. The way they play coverages in Tennessee, how they start out in cover 4 and turn it into cover 2 based on communication during the play, the passing off responsibilities with zone coverage and man coverage and all that communication in the secondary, it requires immense chemistry. So to have different starters and different guys like Andrew Adams, who is that? I don't mean to be cocky or whatever, but like I am as plugged into this football team as you could possibly be without actually being paid by the team to be that plugged in. And I barely had a clue that Andrew Adams was going to start at safety. What is going on? So if they could get Amani Hooker back, man, that would just be absolutely crucial because this secondary with the rotation that's happened, yeah, it's not going to be able to. And like I said, you say protect Wentz. If they can protect Wentz, the Titans are in trouble because the secondary doesn't have the cohesiveness that they need right now to stop the weapons that the Commanders do actually have. Their strength on their football team can take advantage of the Titans' weakness.
And I was saying something earlier. Who would you start? Like let's, of course, Christian Fulton has to be there this week. He has to.
Yeah.
But who's the corner opposite of him? Is it going to be Caleb Farley, Roger McCreary? Who?
Well, here's the thing. So I've been on this since last year. I noticed the pattern, and the Titans have stuck to it. And I think it's just something that Mike Vrabel believes in. The Titans play a different slot cornerback on early downs than they do on late downs. So from last year, they had Elijah Molden as the slot cornerback on early downs because he's a physical guy, instinctive, will blitz, get downhill and get in the run game, all of that, physical, wants to tackle. And then they put Buster Screen in as the slot cornerback on passing downs and took Molden off the field because Screen was a better cover cornerback. So the Titans want to do that with Roger McCreary. They want to have Fulton on the outside and McCreary on the outside. And Molden or Ugo Amadi, who just returned to practice, even though Molden's not off IR yet. Ugo Amadi returned to practice after 2 games missed. He was a full participant. So they're going to have Ugo Amadi in at the slot on early downs with McCreary and Fulton on the outside. And then on passing downs, McCreary will kick back in to be the slot cornerback. And then Titans will have either Terrence Mitchell or Caleb Farley on the outside. They rotated last week. And I know that Caleb Farley gave up a deep pass to Alex Pierce and everybody freaks out on those. But Caleb Farley was relatively solid in that game when you watch the coach's tape. He did what he had to do with his assignment. He didn't get tested a lot, but he had a good coverage play right before the bad play that he had. I thought Caleb Farley made real strides against the Colts, and the Titans' usage of him and working him in, rotating him in about half the game with Terrence Mitchell, I think shows that they're trying to not freeze him out and give him more opportunities. I think he played pretty decently. He has so much talent. Let's see what he can do with reps. And I think this is another game with Jahan Dotson being out where he's going to have the opportunity to get some good reps. And I think Caleb Farley played pretty solid last week. I'd like to see him and Roger McCreary and Christian Fulton as the 3 cornerbacks in passing situations, even if it's McCreary, Fulton, and Amadi on early downs.
And there was a question. Do you think we will continue to see Woods play on special teams with Burks going down?
Well, I think he'll continue to punt return, but like Treylon Burks has played on coverage units, like kickoff return and kickoff and stuff like that. And Woods is absolutely not doing any of that. So, but yeah, Woods is going to continue to punt return because Kyle Phillips' shoulder is messed up and they're still punishing him for the 2 muff punts. So I think Woods will continue to do it until, Kyle Phillips catches like 100 in a row in practice.
And then, of course, somebody came out and said, Tyler Rowland, if this was a face-to-face chat, I'd want your autograph. LOL, your knowledge of the playbook and X's and O's is amazing. I heard there was an opening at OC for the Titans.
Okay, listen, I appreciate it. Thank you. You're far too kind. But the reality is, guys, I have like a high school, like if you think about football knowledge as traditional school, I feel like I have like a high school diploma in football. There are a lot of people out there who have like college degrees, bachelor's, masters in football knowledge that far surpass me. And then people in the NFL, like I know that we get upset at Todd Downing, and some of the things are so simple that it's like, yeah, your average fan maybe is smarter or made a smarter call than the OC in that scenario. Sometimes they do crazy things, and the simple answer is right. But guys, Todd Downing has forgot more about football than we will ever all know collectively. Like he's a coach at the NFL level. So I'm not saying that, he's good at his job and compared to his peers, but while I appreciate it, I certainly am nowhere near qualified to be an offensive coordinator in anything but maybe some Madden football.
And of course, what Shaking Titans says, Tyler is spitting facts.
Well, facts when you guys agree with me. When people don't agree with me, they say that I'm a liar. So I guess it depends. But I just try to tell you what I see on the tape and my interpretation, and hope that it, makes some sense. We're all just trying to figure out, the football team together at once as the season goes on. So.
And then, dude, can you imagine seeing Tyler instead of Downing on the sidelines?
Well, number one, I would do offensive play calling from the booth. I would do that up in the booth. I wouldn't want to do it on the field. I don't think you have a good enough perspective. So that would be my personal philosophy. I would do it from
the booth.
Yeah.
Well, we're pushing right at 50 minutes, so we're going to get out of here. Tyler, thank you. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I'll go ahead and throw your social back up there for anybody who wants to reach out. And as I said, again, Tyler, thank you for taking time out of your evening to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we were finally able to do it. Busy schedule, so I appreciate you working things out, and we finally get on here.
Well, everybody, that was Tyler Rowland from the Locked on Titans podcast. And as I always say, stay classy and tighten up.